IVM.
If you like IVM likes, you should definitely check out another show from the IVM network called Geek Fruit. It's a show where three geeks, Tejas, Jishnu and Dinkar, talk about everything science fiction, adventure, fantasy, movies, TV shows, everything. So quench your thirst for geek conversation every week. Episodes out every Monday and Thursday on the IVM podcast app, the IVM website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of IVM Likes. Yeah, and in the studio we have Madhuri.
Hi.
And Saishree.
Was good.
And me, of course. So in this monsoon we are getting you your daily dose of recommendation. So be thankful to us, guys. So
Wow, why should they be thankful to you?
Yeah, that's because we came through the flood only to record this.
yeah,
And give our recommendations. It's
like good recommendations. And guys, this time, guess what? I'm not recommending an app.
Woo!
Okay, so let's get straight into it. So Madhuri, what do you have?
Okay, so I have a movie to recommend. I watched it on YouTube. I don't know if it's available elsewhere. It's called Colorful. It's a Japanese anime. So whenever you hear the word anime, the first thing that comes to your mind is Ghibli Studio, like the movies made by them.
Right.
So I had not watched any anime which is from the recent, like 21st century.
Right.
So I was really amazed that there are many which exist and they're really good as Studio Ghibli. So this particular film talks about depression, suicide in your teenage.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
So there's this teenage boy who has committed suicide and he's given another life. But his soul doesn't know that it's my soul going back. So he has to find out what has happened to him.
Oh,
so you are traveling with that soul. Like what has happened to this boy? He's meeting his parents. He's meeting his friends. So there are episodes of bullying, being bullied. Then there are episodes of finding out what's wrong with your parents. What if you find your parents are cheating on each other? Something like that. So how do you take it? And also they go so far so as to talk about sex work when you are in your teenage.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
They're very critical issues and I was really amazed at an anime. I've loved animes for that. They pick up issues which are critical, sentimental, and how do you talk about it when you're talking to kids?
Right.
But again,
intense.
when I ask kids to sit with me and watch these movies, I don't find that they're interested in that because the movies are really slow. And we are so used to action and very quick stuff like 1 minute, 2 minute stuff, swipe culture. So they don't sit and watch the whole thing through. But if they manage to do so, it's amazing the way it tells you. And that's why it's called Colorful. So it begins on a very monochromatic tone.
Right.
Because your life is really black and white.
White.
And towards the end, when you start feeling the character, when you know what has happened to him, the message comes through. That we are all live in colors.
You know what I think? Just because these are like anime, these are like kind of cartoons, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think these are made for kids.
I agree. I agree.
I know a lot of people who think like if this is like some sort of cartoon or an anime, like kids should watch. Kids like it's made for kids.
See, but here's the thing, no? If you look at Cartoon Network right now, what they're catering to is children. The storyline of half of their cartoons are meant for adults. So I don't think at this point you have any kind of discretion as what can be marketed to children and what can be marketed to adults.
It cannot be, but as a teacher, as a storyteller, as a parent, if I really want my kid, if I want some young one to sit with me and watch something, I would definitely ask them to watch anime.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, quick question. Was Johnny Bravo made for kids?
Yeah, Johnny Bravo was made for kids. See, this comes back to like Pixar and Disney putting in like subtle adult innuendos. Okay, but Johnny Bravo was made for kids, that's for sure.
Okay. Moving on. Saishree, what do you have?
So I'm recommending a YouTube channel by the name of Avnish Parker. So,
Avnish Parker. Okay.
Yeah, so this YouTube channel is basically an educational YouTube channel where he teaches you Photoshop, After Effects, basically the entire Creative Cloud, and he breaks it down like step by step to the point where he will even sit and describe the toolbox to you and what each thing can do, right? And it's really helpful if you're like beginning right now because it's step by step. Like he'll break down even like the smallest of like steps into like different parts, and he'll create segments even understandable for someone who's never used the application before.
Give an example.
So in After Effects, you can create visuals basically that are moving, but they're still images.
Okay.
Basically,
Okay.
yeah.
This
So
is
he
nice,
will
huh?
break down.
Abhineet will be interested
Yeah.
in that. Yeah.
So he will break down how to create the still image first, and then how to layer it to create like a moving
Motion
image out of
picture. Oh.
It's a really helpful thing because it helped me through college.
I already
yeah.
subscribed to it.
Yeah.
What's it called? Abhineet?
It's called
Avnish
Avnish Parker.
Avnish
And it's like this Indian guy who's doing like a voiceover in the back. So yeah.
I really wonder how YouTube channels work sometimes.
Yeah.
There are really good people out there putting good stuff,
Yeah.
but their subscribers is 400, 500. And then once it picks up, no? You start getting subscribers and you get viewers and it just
Yeah.
spreads.
Right.
It's viral.
Yeah, when AIB was in trend, their videos used to get so many views, but they had like 3 or 4 million subscribers.
Right. They still have 3.5 mil subscribers.
Yeah, I know why, but still, like it doesn't make sense. Like you are such big on YouTube, but you have such small numbers.
But I think that also comes from the fact that not like now everyone's getting into YouTube as in they subscribe to people. They understand like the value of subscribing to a person. I think at the time it was just about ki ye video pe kitne views mil sakte. It wasn't about trying to create like an audience for your channel.
Fair enough.
Great. Okay, let's move on to Abhineet. Abhineet,
Okay.
what do you have to recommend
Yeah.
other than apps today?
Yeah, this time I'm recommending a movie. It's a coming of age film. It's called Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
Oh,
So this is on Netflix.
okay.
So this movie is like a very light-hearted movie. Like you can watch it when you are feeling low or something like that. So there's Michael Cera in the movie. He's the protagonist in the movie, and I'll just give you a brief about the plot. So what happens is this guy, Michael Cera, his girlfriend dumps him.
Okay.
And then he goes to a club. He's a musician. He's a guitarist. So he goes to a club, and these people are a very shit band. So their band name is Jerk Off. Yeah. And it's a like semi-gay band. Michael Cera is the only straight dude in the band, and there are 2 or 3 people who are gay.
Right.
Okay.
So there in the club, there's this girl. It's played by Kat Dennings, and what happens is she is a loner.
Right.
So the girlfriend of Michael Cera, she is kind of bullying Kat Dennings, and she is like, "Are you alone here? Are you with someone?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm with my boyfriend." And she goes and she walks to Michael Cera, and she's like, "Can you like pretend to be my boyfriend for 5 minutes?" And then she kisses.
Okay.
And after that, what happens, like these 2 people, they just comes to know that there's some guy coming to perform. Like he's a big guy, he's a big musician, and they don't reveal the location where he's coming.
Okay.
On the FM or something like that.
All right.
Okay.
So the game is they need to find where he's performing,
Okay.
and then they take off, and then they like spend the whole night. They're going somewhere, and then they're partying, they're meeting some people, and then some friend gets lost, and then they try to find her, and so
Nice.
this sort of movie. And in the end, you need to like, I'm not giving that out.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
No
you.
spoiler.
But you call it coming of age story. So you see the characters change. The characters progress. Not to use progress, but yeah, something in that character has changed.
It's a story of just one night. Okay? So there's not much character growth shown in the movie, but as to what they feel for each other, like what they perceive of love and what they perceive of like a relationship, it certainly have
Changes.
grown. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In that way, it's a coming of age movie.
Okay.
Nice.
So with that, we have come to the closure of our recommendations.
Okay, so on that note, we'll just quickly wrap up this segment. And Madhuri, what did you recommend?
I recommended an anime film called Colorful.
Saishree?
I recommended a YouTube channel by the name of Avnish Parker.
And I recommended a movie called Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. Guys, you can find it on Netflix. And on that note, we'll just quickly take a short break and be right back, where we talk about independent films and parallel cinema in the second half. Be right back, guys.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. On our social media, one of the things we do is if you send us a screenshot of what you're listening to, we will repost it on our social network so that people can see that what people are listening to. Put us some comments and we'll respond to them. Also want to let people know that we're still hiring. We're looking for producers, content creators, audio engineers, developers, designers, and business roles, and basically all kinds of other things. Go to the careers page on ivmpodcast.com or send us an email at careers@indusvox.com. Wanted to announce 2 new shows that we are starting, Tech Careers in the New and Agla Station Adulthood. Tech Careers in the New is a brand new podcast presented by Accenture. It's hosted by our very own Shiladitya Mukhopadhyay, my co-host on Shunya One. On this show, he's talking to Accenture leaders about the latest and greatest in the world of technology and gives exclusive tips on technology careers, how to grab opportunities and stay relevant. Watch out for fortnightly episodes on Wednesdays starting July 3rd. The other new show that we're launching this week is an exciting show called Agla Station Adulthood, where best friends Ritasha Rathore and Ayushi Amin ride through the various stations of life. Whether you're in your mid-20s, just entering them, or about to cross into the next decade, tune into this fun show. On Cyrus Says, best-selling author Amish Tripathi talks to Cyrus about the shared universe of all his books, the rich and inclusive history of ancient India, and his new book in the Ramchandra series, Ravan, Enemy of Aryavarta. On Equity Sahi, Shrey Lunkar, Senior VP at Motilal Oswal AMC, talks to Anupam about the pharma sector in India. On Advertising is Dead, Varun Dugirala is in conversation with the founders of Pocket Aces, Ashwin Suresh and Anirudh Pandit. They discuss the growth and potential of the Indian digital content market. On Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Janice and Anirudh recommend shows that are easy to watch. Join them as they talk about the TV shows Love, Crashing and Lovesick. On the 25th episode of Golgappa, Tripti is joined by film director Vikram Fadnis. He talks about how he started his journey from being a fashion designer to becoming a movie director and his upcoming Marathi movie Smile Please. Also, our host Tripti plays an important part in this movie. On Not Just Dansak, Parzen talks to Chef Viraf Patel about Parsi fusion food. They discuss innovation versus traditional food in the Parsi food circles. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh talk with investor and trader Harsh Vora to better understand the tussle between the Reserve Bank of India and the Indian government. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Hi guys. Am I supposed to be on this episode?
Yes.
And now Abbas has joined us.
Welcome back to the second half of IVM Likes. We are going to discuss parallel cinema, but before that, we have another producer joining us, Abbas.
Hi.
Yeah, he's come late. But yes.
You started early actually. I was on time.
Okay, Abbas, do you have something to recommend before we begin?
Yeah, so I actually missed out your recommendations, but I actually saw this very cool Tamil film on Netflix day before yesterday.
Okay.
At the time of recording. It's called Super Deluxe.
Oh,
yeah.
Have you guys seen it? Has
Yeah,
anyone
no,
seen it?
I wanted to see
Saishree
it.
has seen it. Abhineet and Madhuri
No,
haven't seen
I will
it.
see it now.
It's a very amazing film. It came out earlier this year.
Please don't
Okay.
spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil. You can't spoil the film because even if I tell you the entire plot from start to finish, I still won't do justice to how it's
okay.
shot. So a lot of my friends who don't usually watch non-Hindi cinema also went to watch this film, and they said it's a theatrical experience. You have to watch it. But unfortunately, I couldn't because the only show with English subtitles was in the afternoon, and I couldn't bunk work, as you all know.
Yeah.
I saw the film. So in a nutshell, the film is 4 separate stories which get interlinked along the way.
Okay.
And all 4 stories deal with the eccentric nature of coincidences. So the first, I'll give you like a very brief synopsis of all the stories. One story is about a young married couple who, the wife's ex-lover happens to have died in the house. How,
Okay.
why that happened, how they deal with it, I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Okay.
The second story is about 3 or 4 very horny teenagers
Okay.
who want to watch a porn film because their parents aren't home. What they end up watching instead of the porn film is, again, I won't spoil it for you. It is very unique. And the third story is about a family where the father of the family is coming back to his house after 6 long years. And when he comes back, he actually comes back transformed as a woman.
Oh,
And the family can't deal with it, and the society can't deal with it. And it's essentially his journey in a day after coming back home.
My
All right.
God.
Okay.
So these three stories, I've given you just a very brief synopsis of what they are. So it's a long movie. It's a 2-hour, 55-minute movie, but it's totally worth the running time. I thought it's a long movie, so I'll probably break it down into parts, but I ended up watching the entire film in one go. It's totally worth its running time. Through the film, the story is interlinked, and they interlink in very unusual ways. Like it's not a very unique concept. A lot of films have done this. Like I was reminded of some films from the 90s, like Pulp Fiction and Crash did this. They have narrative stories intermingling. But they still find a unique way to do this. It's very authentically Indian. It's very authentically South Indian. It's very funny. It's very dark also at times. It's very colorful. So please watch it. It's absolutely a joyride. It's called Super Deluxe. So the film is directed by Tyagarajan Kumaraja. He made another film. Apologies to South Indians if I did not pronounce this correctly. He made another film a long time ago in 2011 or 12, which was also very well made. And he's made this one now. So check it out. It's a very, very, very fun movie and definitely worth a watch. It's called Super Deluxe and it's streaming on Netflix.
Okay.
Oh, Netflix.
This reminded me of one Japanese film called Do Deska Den.
Okay.
So you have 10 narratives in there which intermingle.
Okay.
And the whole idea of Do Deska Den is the sound of a train going. जिसको हम हिंदी में छुक 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 बोलते हैं. So in Japanese it's Do Deska Den, Do Deska Den.
Okay.
So all the stories are like you get to see into the window of that one block of a train, and it's like one train. That is the whole metaphor from the movie.
Got it.
So when you're saying it, and now that we started talking about regional film,
Right.
This takes us to our topic today, that is parallel cinema. So when parallel cinema began in 60s and 70s, it began as a trend in Bengali films with Satyajit Ray.
Right.
And remember, we don't have studio systems in place. We don't have multiplexes. We don't have screens. So there is some another purpose. It's not set in the economy the way it's set today.
Right.
So the films were made keeping into mind social. Social was at its core. So all the actors you have, there's no star system yet. So actors are actually people. So if you're talking about working class, people from working class come to act and they tell you, okay, these are my problems. And it was inspired from Italian neorealism. So you have this movie called Bicycle Thieves.
Yeah.
So the person who's making the film actually goes into that region. The locations aren't, again, fancy places. Goes into the location, directs the film there, and the people who are working there, they become the characters or actors in your film.
Okay.
So that's how parallel cinema started. But then it moves ahead. You have Ritwik Ghatak, Mrinal Sen, many people, but they are mostly regional films.
Right.
Then you come to Hindi cinema and you start with studio system. Now the studio system is far-fetched, so it came to be termed as middle cinema. No longer parallel per se. You have studio system, but you're still talking about these social issues. Like you have Mirch Masala.
Right.
You have that movie Manthan, where you have Girish Karnad playing a role. So yeah, that is the whole context to parallel cinema. So I'll open it to you. What do you think about parallel cinema today? How would you look at it?
No, the parallel cinema movement that you're talking about, I think it died out somewhere in the mid-90s. And I think that then the parallel cinema thing became like a system in itself. Like you had actors like Nasiruddin Shah and Ratna Pathak Shah and Om Puri. These guys became stars because of parallel cinema. And I think there is a interview of Nasiruddin Shah himself, or I think maybe he wrote this in his autobiography, where he said that when they started the parallel cinema movement, it was essentially all the students that came out of FTII.
Yes.
The way Nasiruddin Shah puts it, he said, we thought we could change the world with our films. And it took us about 20 years to realize that was not true. Essentially what they thought was that this experimental kind of stuff that we are making and showing it amongst ourselves, there is an audience for it out there also, and we should take these kind of films to them. So I think Gulzar was also a big part of this movement. So I think it's a spectrum, the parallel cinema movement. I think there are films which are quite accessible also, like Jaane Bhi Do Yaaro is an accessible film. It's a comedy film. It has a narrative. So even someone who's not used to watching non-mainstream films will still enjoy those films. Then there are films like, there is this film called Om Dar Badar. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's essentially a stoner film. Like that film is meant to get stoned and watched, because there is no narrative. There is weird dialogue. The imagery is just random, but it's a cult classic. It was made by Om Swaroop, who also made some a lot of films in the parallel cinema movement. So I think there is a spectrum of these. Like directors like Shyam Benegal and
Yes.
Ghatak, I still think is kind of an arty filmmaker, but Shyam Benegal made some
A
accessible
lot
films.
of them. Even
Yeah.
Ketan Mehta.
Yeah, that's true. There's also Money Call, who was
Yes.
who was involved in this. I think a big part of this parallel cinema was played by Doordarshan, because many a times these directors wouldn't get distributors for their films.
Yeah.
So Doordarshan would take those films and telecast it on TV, which is a very weird thing to think of now, because any major TV
Was Om Darbadar like came on Doordarshan?
I'm not sure. It became a cult classic because it wasn't screened a lot in theaters, but it just became this thing that, dude, you gotta get stoned and watch this movie. and now it's actually on NFDC. NFDC was actually the national film something. I'm sorry if I'm not getting the thing, but NFDC was the home of these offbeat filmmakers. And the film Om Darbadar is now streaming on the official NFDC website.
Yeah.
So as they've remastered it and cleaned out a lot of it, they've improved the sound and everything. So now they are owning up to the films that were kind of shunned in that at that time, I feel like.
Yeah. But after parallel cinema, if you look at the parallels today, we can only look at certain elements. It's not parallel cinema per se.
Right now I don't think parallel cinema as such exists. Like if you take a film like Masan, right? Ideally it's not a very mainstream film, but then if you win something at Cannes Film Festival, then it becomes like you can easily watch it in your multiplex right now. It's not a very, or even like something like a Chak De India. Shah Rukh Khan can still choose to do a film which is about a women's hockey team. He's the only big star in that film, but then he chooses to make to star in it. It becomes a hit, and then so that the parallel tag
has been done.
Yeah, like back then they used to pride themselves in not being part of the mainstream.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's all mingled together. Like even as we speak, a film playing in the theaters, Article 15, which is Ayushmann Khurrana.
Yeah.
Deals with a very serious subject. Then Ayushmann Khurrana is this mainstream actor who can sing.
But no, I think he's not so mainstream considering that kind of film, it's a different genre altogether. He has pioneered a different genre. Again, which is about middle class.
You ask the average person on the street, he'll go watch, he will know who Ayushmann Khurrana is.
So that's what, because the distribution is very different today. Then it wasn't, there weren't multiplexes.
Yeah.
It wasn't so easily available on YouTube or your other sites.
Yeah.
Today it's there, and also Netflix has a lot to do in it. Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all these platforms. You get your circulation of movies is so fast that it's no longer.
Yeah, because that is also another way you can categorize films as to how they're being distributed, whether they're being distributed on like digital platforms, whether they're being distributed with in screens, cineplexes, multiplexes like that. So with art films, the feel of it only comes in that, I can only watch this at a film festival, or I can only... I think that is also another reason why we consider a lot of these parallel cinema films very mainstream, considering that we can go and like very freely watch it anywhere that we like.
So I actually attended a lecture by Anurag Kashyap recently, and he's one of those examples of how someone who started off as an arty filmmaker, and now he's like full on mainstream. So he said, yes, in India, people like watching art films as long as they are for free. Okay. If it's a film festival, you'll go watch it. If it's on TV, you'll watch it. Very rarely that you'll pay good money to watch it. Also, the theaters will have one show at 9 o'clock in the morning and another one at 11 o'clock in the night. Okay, there's no prime time exposure given to an art film. So I think that's the. I'd like to know what you guys think about the Netflix. Like you said, Netflix plays a big reason on it. I agree with that in Hollywood. I don't agree that is true for Bollywood or Indian films.
I'm waiting for it because you see movies like Lust Stories. Then there was one like Liars Dice.
Right.
So all these films haven't been released on big screen, so mainstream per se, but they're all very hit. Like it's a hit on Netflix.
I doubt that. I don't think they're hit. Like Chopsticks, I don't think did
Chopsticks not
much. There are there were a couple of more Netflix original Hindi films that happened, which did not make much of a. Again, the problem here is Netflix doesn't release numbers or figures. The only Indian original thing that became big on Netflix, as far as I think, was Sacred Games, and I think Sacred Games is pretty mainstream. Yes, you can curse on that show. Yes, you can take some creative liberties, but it's still a very hardcore
mainstream,
populist, massy show as far as I'm concerned. I doubt if that is true,
I think what you're trying to go off at the fact that how much buzz it has created, not necessarily if it's being appreciated, liked, or being viewed in a certain type of light.
I think Lust Stories, for that matter, was like, there are 4 stories. So 3 stories. I did not like one story, but 3 stories were really good.
But then again, Lust Stories has a story directed by Karan Johar, who's not a parallel filmmaker.
That's what I'm saying. It's no longer the way we used to categorize it. So there are people jumping in different kinds, different systems. It's no longer ki acha ye hai to hi parallel hai, because there are so many platforms available today, and you want it to be distributed. It's no longer that we made it. It'll go to the film festival, win and come back.
Right.
Now your whole idea.
But here's the thing. No, Netflix is also picking this up from film festival. Like Roma and Sony were both picked up from Mumbai Film Festival.
Yeah.
So you can't really say that it'll not, like, it's only being picked up from a film festival, or it's only like they're sending it to distributors, because Netflix gets about like 500-600 scripts a day which they look at, but out of which an art film getting that kind of exposure where it's actually being picked up and viewed and staying on Netflix for a very long amount of time is big in itself.
I mean, I just wonder if more, like for example, Chopsticks, have more people seen Chopsticks on Netflix than they would have if it had got even a limited theatrical release.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know
is
if I
a
have an
question
answer
one
to
can
that.
ask. Yeah. Yes.
But I have a feeling it's because it was on Netflix, people watched it. If it didn't,
That's true, but then again, Netflix in India has less than 1 million subscribers.
That's also true.
Within less than 1 million, the people who categorically watch Indian stuff, within that categorically watch Indian original stuff. I think it just cuts. It's like an Indian band releasing an album in English, right?
Right.
It's like people who listen to English music, within that people who listen to Indian English music.
Will go and watch it. But also, that film was made on a low budget, right?
Sure,
So if it had a theatrical release, the budget would increase. And today,
agreed.
the same production house or the same person who made this film can make 3-4 films on different topics.
Agreed. So
instead of
I
one
think
theatrical release.
that film which will actually create a buzz, which is made on a low budget, which only gets distributed through Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, the benchmark of a thing becoming successful in India is, are people torrenting it? Are people pirating it?
Yeah.
If people are pirating it, because I happened to be in a meeting with a very with a best-selling Indian author recently, and he said that I don't see the official figures that they give me. I see if the street seller on the streets is selling a pirated copy of my book. If that happens, then I know my book is a success.
So that makes sense.
Similarly, Sacred Games was pirated a lot, which means it was a successful. It was also pirated because people were like, oh, it has nudity, it has galis, so let's see what it is about. Part of it was that. But I don't think people are running to see a pirated copy of Chopsticks or what was the other thing that they made? Selection Day, the original series that they did.
But Chopsticks is like a concept that we've probably seen before. It's very Meri Dad Ki Maruti types comes to Netflix.
I haven't seen that.
Meri Dad, I like that movie.
I like the movie.
Sorry,
it's not a bad movie.
No, don't apologize.
First of all, don't apologize. Second of all, I'm not saying it's a bad film. It's just like a concept that it's not new. That she gives her car for parking, and the car goes missing. That is it. And in Dad Ki Maruti, his dad buys him a new car, and he takes her out on night ride, and the car goes missing.
Okay.
And that's the thing. The whole story narrative from here is how they try and find the car in the end.
Yeah.
So it's not.
It's kind of same.
Yeah.
But
One and the same thing.
What I also liked about parallel cinema when I was watching a lot of it together from the movement was them experimenting with the form. I don't know if we do that anymore. There's this film called Swayamvaram by Adur Gopal Krishnan.
Yeah.
So what you have is the camera is sitting in the bus. So usually in the first few frames you establish your location, you establish who's going to be the protagonist. Here the camera for 10 minutes, the camera is in the bus and you're just looking at multiple people. And if your bus jumps, the camera also jumps. And you realize, oh, you're watching a movie. This is not a straight linear kind of direction. There are no cuts and edits. So many faces, I don't know who is the story about. And then after 10 minutes, when you see one person in the frame, you're like, okay, the story is about this person.
Yeah, I think I recently watched this Arabic film. It's actually by a Lebanese film. It's based in Lebanon. About this it's called Capernaum.
Capernaum,
Yeah. So it's about a little kid who wants to sue his parents for giving him the life that they gave him. Because they're from a very poor family. And the whole narrative when the movie starts, right, they just show the streets and they show him and his family, and you don't really understand who they're going to talk about, because even in the posters, the trailers, not a lot has been established. Okay, and you're waiting to find out who they want to talk about, and then you see them come into the courtroom where the parents are talking, and the judge asked the parents that, why do you think your son called you here? And that is when you finally find out that it's the kid who's suing his parents. And it's like
Did you just spoil the film for us?
No.
Yeah, that's what I
No,
was
it's
going to
not.
say.
It's established. It's established even in the descriptions.
Alright.
Yeah.
Cool. I think what Netflix and OTT platforms are great for is for finding these films. Like she said, a lot of films from film festivals end up on these platforms.
Yeah.
But I think as far as Indian original films are concerned, I still think I'm waiting for that one big breakout. But Saishree is from a film festival, right?
Yeah.
Not from a film festival, sorry, from a film school. You're from Whistling Woods.
From Whistling Woods.
So the kind of experimentation and weird playing with structures, I think that must still happen a lot in a film school.
It does. I think we primarily, like my college very specifically, tries to teach them to first create movies like that.
Right.
And then try and find your like mainstream niche where you can be like, tum Bollywood movie banana hai ki nahi.
Right.
But what they encourage is trying to create a film that is beyond what anyone else can perceive.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you try to mix those elements and
together
with
and then
mainstream and adapt it or adopt
Which
it.
is a very hard thing to do.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
It is. That is why everyone comes out in two minds when they come out of Whistling Woods.
I think, so what we call independent cinema, some of them have done that very beautifully. Have you seen that film, Margarita with a Straw?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a lovely
So
film.
there's one scene which is there in my mind when a mother dies.
Right.
So how have they shot this? Instead of showing that big funeral where people are crying and you want to cry and you feel cathartic, they just cut it into 4 frames. Tuck, tuck, tuck. So in one, the mother has died. In another, she's sitting on a chair and looking at all the stuff that mother has left behind. And the last one, you see the birds are flying away. So it's like I'm coming to deal with it. I'm at peace with it. And you don't see her crying so much on screen. It's a emotional journey into 4 frames. That's it.
I think with another parallel film that I saw was last year, sometime, I'm going to say in March, this film came out with Pulkit Samrat and Richa Chadda called 7 Stories.
Okay.
And we had like a private screening for this film, and I genuinely like really liked it, and because it was like 7 different stories coming. Well, they don't merge in together, but it's the only middle ground for this where they all come in together is that they live in the same chawl. They live in the same chawl building.
Okay.
So it's about how within the same chawl there is a, an old auntie living who suddenly has a new tenant coming in to stay because she's trying to sell the house.
Yeah.
Then there is a girl who wants to get married to another boy from the same chawl, but the parents won't let it happen, and why. Then there is another story about this husband and wife that don't really like each other and they're constantly fighting, and the big plot twist in that. So it was a really nice film, and it had this one scene where the girl is a Hindu, the boy is a Muslim. So when the girl and the guy was leaving the chawl, so there's this scene where she's standing behind a framework of fairy lights, and it looks like she's in jail while the guy like walks away.
Okay.
Oh man, it was so beautiful.
Yeah, so they experiment a lot with frames, structures like that. Yeah, I remember there was this one character in this movie, Lunchbox.
Yeah.
We don't see her. We just know that the lady making that lunchbox is talking to the character, जो ऊपर वाले floor पे रहती है, and you can only listen to the voice. So all that the character establishes is her voice.
Yeah.
So
Did any one of you watched Photograph?
No.
I haven't.
I want to.
Sania Mano.
Sania Malhotra.
Yeah,
and Nawazuddin.
Where has it come out?
Amazon Prime. It's available on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
It ran in theaters for like a week, and then now it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
I watched a movie called Hotel Salvation. We spoke about
Oh,
it.
Mukti Bhavan.
Mukti
I
Bhavan.
love Mukti Bhavan. It's I think it's something.
The correct thing is you spoiled it for us. Not for the listeners, because I think that episode was edited. But in the studio, he full spoiled everything. And we're like, did you just spoil it for us? Yeah. And cut it. Told the engineer to cut the thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
I think
It's a beautiful
It's
film,
a beautiful, beautiful film. Adil Hassan in the movie has been. I think he's the one to watch, apart from the grandfather in the film. and it's just very cathartic in a way, because the one thing we all fear in life is death, and it's about a grandfather who's obsessed with the fact that he's going to die, and it's about the relationship, how it affects the son. Adil Hussain plays the son in the movie. How it affects the son and the grandfather and the dad and their relationship, and his separate and the dad's separate relationship with death in itself, or like his obsession with death. I think this movie has a lot of I'm going to say symbolism in it, because it's not like direct dialogues. A majority of the movie is very silent, where they're just looking at each other. But it's a visual treat for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I said that. The OTT platforms and stuff is doing wonders in Hollywood, because the thing is, what Hollywood is doing now is it's taking, like, whenever an indie filmmaker makes a mark, they hire them and give them like big budget stuff to work on. Like the guy who made Black Panther, Ryan Coogler, had made small budget films, but then someone at Marvel saw it and said, like, this person will be ideal for this. So what's happening is a lot of indie films give voices to like African American filmmakers, women filmmakers, trans filmmakers, gay filmmakers who don't get representation in mainstream cinema. When they make a mark with those indie films, then the mainstream people are like, okay, now let's give them a chance, right? Which I don't think is happening in Indian films. Like in India, if you make a successful indie film, you get pigeonholed into that slot. कि ये बंदा या बंदी सिर्फ indie films ही बना सकती. There are some people who've broken out of that. I think Zoya Akhtar is one of them who made Luck by Chance, but then she made much more mainstream and successful films. And I think Gully Boy is a good example of how you can have the aesthetics and sort of the feel of an indie film, but then be as massy as you can.
Also, her series Made in Heaven.
Made in Heaven is
amazing.
Made in Heaven still, I think it's aimed at like a slightly posh crowd, but yeah, it does have.
But you find a lot of parallel strands in the way she narrates it.
That's true. Yes. So yeah, I think that India should do this also. Whoever the studio bosses are, I think what is happening is they don't look at independent film, like Ritesh Batra, the guy who made Photograph, was the guy who made Lunchbox. So maybe he just wants to make those kind of films, but in an ideal world, he would be given a truckload of money and be like, now make more independent films, make more mainstream films. So
yeah, true. Let's hope that happens. Okay, so with that, we'll call an end to this particular episode.
I just want to give a shout out. I said and I mentioned NFDC earlier in the episode. It stands for National Film Development Corporation of India. Check out their website. There's a lot of parallel cinema there, and also there's a streaming site called Mubi, MUBI.
Okay.
What they do is they upload 30 films in a month. One film every day, and you have a week to watch that film, and after a week the film goes away from the website.
Okay.
That's
so they upload a lot of experimental and art films along with a lot of mainstream films also.
Just MUBI.
Is it free or is
it's not free? So it subscription costs $500. So for a month I actually did this. I unsubscribed from Netflix and subscribed to Mubi. But the whole watch the film within a week thing is quite a task to.
Only when you're up for it, you sign for it.
This seems like a booty call with movies.
They uploaded a bunch of it's a foreign service, but they also uploaded a bunch of Satyajit Ray and Guru Dutt films also. So they also pick up stuff from around the world. So check those. NFDC and Mubi would be my recommendations to check out independent and art house film.
Okay, so on that parallel recommendations, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can follow us on our social media handles. Abhineet?
You guys can follow me or reach out to me on Instagram. I'm Abhineet Mandal, that's without space.
Saishree?
You can follow me on Instagram at Panic Salad and on Twitter at Shroom Salad.
Abbas?
You can follow me on Twitter at Abbas Momin, and on Instagram I'm Abbas Momin88.
You can follow me on Instagram at MadAd. On that note, see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right, we interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, the Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.